about a little bit more halfway through, and I'm going to hopefully give you something a little exciting to think about. So I'm from CNAM. We're one of the new kids on the block as far as CNAM delivery providers. You guys, I'm sure, some of you guys that deal with carriers, you have wholesale or you're not getting your CNAM delivered on the line. You're probably using a third-party provider unless you've got an SS7 link and you're dipping yourself. And I see him smiling over here. He's like, nap for a little while. So thank you for having us here. We're going to talk a little bit about what CNAM is, what the status of CNAM is, and then some ideas on integrating with opensips, and then I'm going to kind of open up to you guys and see how you guys are actually integrating it. Okay, so who are the people that are using CNAM? Well, we've got our end users, businesses that are picking up wholesale service using things like Astra's free PBX, PBX in a flash, Fusion PBX. You've got people using soft switches like FreeSwitch, and then SIP proxy servers like opensips. VoIP providers, the smaller ones, are using CNAM and Acme, Cisco, their SBCs, and again in SIP proxies and servers like opensips. And then VoIP developers are starting to use CNAM a lot in customized applications for call centers and fraud detection, which is one of the things that we'll actually get to here in a second. So what are some of the benefits of using CNAM? Well, you're definitely going to get a higher call answer ratio, which turns into directly billable time. It's a fact. Calls with CNAM get answered more often than calls without. It's also a feature that customers want. For those of you that have ever dealt with a wholesale provider that doesn't deliver CNAM on the line, your customers are probably saying, well, why don't I see the caller name? So customers are more apt to choose providers that do deliver CNAM. So one of the things that people are using CNAM, they're using it more in a layered mix when they're trying to do some of their fraud detection. Everybody in this room knows that fraud is the most expensive cost of doing business in VoIP. Some of you that are more seasoned and had a bit more under your wing, you've done it, you've suffered from it in the past, but developing strategies to basically be able to kind of weed out fraud, those are kind of ongoing and constantly developing. So some of the ways that companies are using CNAM. Inbound call centers, they're going to use that in scenarios where people apply for a credit card, for instance. They'll check the CNAM of the phone number to verify that it's actually belonging to the person that has the card. Businesses that take credit cards over the phone can match the CNAM to the card name. Sorry, I skipped over here. So people that maybe apply for credit, they're going to use that as just one layer of their fraud protection. And then inbound call centers can use CNAM to verify that the callers are who they say they are. For such a simple little thing, people still rely on that type of data for verification. So let's talk about the old way of getting CNAM. In the past, you required VPN access. Some companies still do require this. Providers do charge, the CNAM providers, larger ones like TNS and AT&T and Verizon, they're still charging you for your access. It's one of their fixed costs or their built-in costs, if you will. The equipment that VPNs run on, it's an additional layer of system failure management. So I'm sure everybody in the VoIP world is using all kinds of different VPNs for different reasons, connections to the providers. You all know that, for the most part, that equipment that you're running those VPNs on, it can fail. And then all of a sudden, all of your connections are down. And VPN equipment was expensive, and the good stuff today still is. So people will use software approaches, but to really kind of offload that whole VPN overhead, they're going to use equipment. So the VPN in and of itself is kind of a barrier to entry for a lot of people that are using the PBXs or even the opensips at certain layers, if you will. And then the carriers themselves, there was limited data access. Not all the carriers chose to share their CNAM databases between them, so you had to go out and get different relationships with different carriers. Not all of them were equipped to deliver CNAM. And then the DIPs were very expensive. They were upwards of 2 cents. So the old method, which is still used in some of the providers now, is the subscribe notify. You'd send a subscribe upstream to the provider with the phone number. They'd send you a 200 OK, and then you'd wait and get the notify with the CNAM in it. This method, especially in scenarios like opensips, where you have a config file and then directly in your free PBXs and your asterisks and your free switches, it was difficult to integrate it directly into the call flow. Usually what you have to do is spit up another process or an application that you attach to the call flow. And then processing the extra messages in the subscribe notify, although not much, but it does have extra overhead and does take longer for the queries to actually fulfill. So let's see what today brings us. Bye-bye VPN. No need for them anymore. The subscribe notify method, it's gone. We're throwing it in the trash. So today, most carriers choose to share their CNAM data. They're equipped to do that, and the cost of DIPs has dramatically come down. Not to mention that the cooperation between carriers has definitely flourished.
What's a DIP?
A DIP is actually a request that goes into the SS7 network for the CNAM of the phone number. So when you send the phone number in, it goes to the owner, the carrier that owns the phone number. The request is made to them, they'll return that up the path to whoever's making the request. So this is how we're doing it today. Your SIP proxy PBX application is going to make an HTTP request. Very, very simple. Form a URL, send it upstream to us or any other provider that provides HTTP. We're going to send it into the SS7 network. Deliver that back to you on your choice of output, either raw text, JSON, or XML. Everything got really simple. And as you can see, the URL is really easy to form. And most of the providers will basically have a very similar format. We authenticate by IP or an SSL encrypted token. And in most cases, again, anyone that knows system architecture, if you're doing IP auth versus actually an SSL encrypted token, you're going to get a little bit faster time on the responses, probably 20, 30 milliseconds faster. In a high volume environment, that does matter. You're able to control the output, whereas in the past you had to build your own output. If you wanted JSON down to the applications, you had to build some type of a bridge from the SIP packet that you were getting delivered on the notify. And you can do things like customize unavailable replies now, where some systems, a blank response or an unavailable, but let's say that you have a custom application that you want a specific response sent back to you when something is unavailable. You're able to do that. You can also do things like add custom tags to the DIPs and track them in the logs that you can download. So going from just a very simple SIP subscribe method where you just send the packet up and get that notified, the ability to kind of put something a little bit more, I guess, modern together, opened up, and a lot of providers now are starting to do this. So let's look at some of the output choices. Raw text is raw text. You're just going to get the CNAM, 15 characters. You can get an XML response, and as you can see, the detail for the XML response is a little bit more robust. You're going to get the things like your rate, balance, your tags, your call ID, the caller ID number of the calling party, and then the same thing in a JSON response. All nicely formatted for you by just simply querying a URL. How am I doing on time? Yeah. So let's look at some of the ways that you can integrate this into opensips. You can directly integrate using the opensips config file using an execute AVP. In the development branch right now, which I believe is now going to be stable, they've introduced a new REST client module, and you can use any flavor of language to proxy the dip from opensips. So let's look at what we got to do when we want to use the execute AVP. First thing you want to do is make sure that curl's loaded on your system. Next, you want to make sure that the AVP ops module is loaded in opensips. You store the number you want to do a lookup in any type of AVP, like an AVP source, and then you're going to use this command right here. Execute AVP, you're going to set a timeout on that, and then there's your URL with the phone number on the end. It's going to return the CNAM into AVP CNAM, and then you just do a UAC replace from, and now you've integrated CNAM into all of your calls. So the new module, the REST client module, makes things a little bit easier. You set a couple of parameters, and again, you guys will basically set these on your own, based on what you guys want. Your connection timeout and your curl timeout are the two main parameters that you really want to look at. How tolerant are you going to be with your provider? Are you going to give them 2 seconds? Are you going to give them 1 second? Then you execute the REST get. Same scenario, AVP source is getting sent. You're getting it back in AVP CNAM, and then UAC replace, and you've got CNAM on your call. So then you can also use any flavor of languages. In essence, build a Perl script, a Python script, a Bash script, a C script, and then use some of the tools available to you in the configs in the opensips config file. Perl execute, Python execute, or just a simple execute. That just kind of gets it out of opensips, but at this point, there really isn't a need when you can directly integrate with the 2 processes that we showed before. So let's compare some of the CNAM providers right now. Some of them offer no monthly fees. Some of them offer lower costs per dip. But you can see that basically all of them are not strictly SS7 results. They're going to mix, they're going to supplement, they're going to cache. Fact is, just about every single provider out there today is doing some form of caching at some level. With us, every single dip is going into the SS7. We don't cache anything. There are no databases of CID name. Everything gets proxied right into the SS7 now. And as you can see, we're a little bit cheaper than everybody else. No monthly fees, no contracts. We basically have a feeling that, hey, if you like the service, stay. If you don't, you have lots of choices, obviously. One of the biggest things that some of the providers out there are doing is they're forcing you to pay for unavailable dips. They're either going to charge you a full price or a slightly reduced price for your unavailable dips. Some providers will replace the unavailable with a city-state from a local DB lookup and still charge you the full price. We're never going to charge you for any unavailable dips. Fact is if you're querying information and the information's not there, it's not right to charge you for it. Optionally, though, we do give the ability to replace city-state for a small fee. So if you want it, it's optional. You can activate it or deactivate it in your accounts. So how about the data quality? Like I said before, most providers cache to some degree. Caching has the biggest negative effect on CNAM data quality. Whether you're caching for 24 hours, a couple of days, a week, a month, fact is that there's a chance that when your customer does a dip, they're not getting the most up-to-date information. So caching at any layer destroys the integrity of the entire ecosystem. Be it carriers, middlemen, providers to their customers. Most providers will blend data from white pages or third-party source. So these third-party sources and white pages basically have dated data. They accumulate it by gaining access to various mined databases and doing web searches. In our opinion, it's better to give no data than give the wrong data. can't stress it enough. We don't cache at all. Ever. Every dip goes right into the SS7 network. The integrity is guaranteed to be authentic. It's delivered right from the owner of the number. And by not providing any cache data, our dips are fulfilled in under 500 milliseconds. It's because we don't do any DD lookups, everything is direct. So go ahead and sign up, try it out. It's free, no obligations. Use the referral code for opensips. We're going to double the number of free dips that you guys are going to get to try before you buy. And at this point, I just kind of want to open up if anyone's got any questions, any discussions. I really want to know how are, other than the methods that we've discussed, how are some of you using CNAM in your companies right now? Anybody?
We use it for custom-based call routing. So if the boss is calling, he doesn't have to ever wait. It just skips all the rules and goes.
So instead of using the phone number, you're actually using the actual CNAM. That's great.
Yeah.
When the boss calls, you want to make sure his call's answered. There's no doubt about it.
And we've got doctors that are the same way. If they see their name on it, they want it 100%. They want to get through right now. So
I agree. And that, again, back to the scenario where, you know, the integrity of the data is very important in those scenarios. Let's say that you were using a third-party provider, and all of a sudden it came up John Smith. What is that customer going to do? He's going to freak out.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. How about anyone else? Anyone else using it in their business right now? Really?
What do we do to put it in? If, for instance, we have numbers we get from Verizon, 34,000 numbers at University Park Arena, and they will only put in the street address that deliver PRIs, they won't put in individual addresses, they won't take our data live. They will, but then they'll charge us some amount for every change we put in, something like 25 cents per change.
Right.
A ridiculous amount of money. And then if we want to populate the database, yeah, sure, 25 cents a number times 34,000. So,
Right.
what options do we have to skip Verizon, go right to Signal System 7, or they own the numbers?
They own the numbers, and that's where it becomes very, very difficult and fuzzy. If they own the numbers, then they're the ones controlling it. But I will tell you this, by law, especially if you've got 911 on those numbers, any type of bundle 911, they have to, absolutely have to, take that data and make sure that it's up to date.
Oh, okay. You're mixing two very important features.
Yeah, right.
There's ALI, which is the address of the ANI.
Yes.
Okay.
And there's the name.
And then the caller ID name. Okay. Those are two different things. The caller ID database is a totally separate database. The ALI database is actually run by whoever has the 911 organization.
We populate the 911 data ourselves. We skip Verizon entirely.
Okay.
And the local CSAT takes our data every day with an FTP transfer, complete cache. If there's a move in or change that happens within a 2-hour increment, they get that right away.
Right.
So Verizon still sends them all the data, and we overwrite that, and the ALI data, the ALI database is not used for our numbers. The PSAT takes our numbers directly. That's because we have a contractual agreement with them to make sure that.
Well, that's not CNAM. That's not CNAM.
That's not
No,
CNAM.
no,
that's not CNAM.
That's 911. We're just trying to make that perfect.
Right.
So for CNAM, is there some way we can give that to people? Can we put it in email.org? I don't know what to do with it.
Well, if you don't know the number, you can't. That's in the end, it's whether they're going to play ball with you or not.
Right.
So I got to tell you that if you were my customer and you were buying 34,000 numbers from me, I would make sure that you're happy. And if it's 25 cents, I'd throw it out the window because I'm going to make more money on you based on your call volume.
Yeah, well, we're going to end up putting all the numbers to level 3 and so you can buy it Verizon anyway, but the process of doing that is multi-year.
Right.
So we're just looking for opportunities to push the data the other direction. Let's see what, nothing.
Nope.
Nobody believes it, okay.
So if you don't do caching, does that lower the performance? Like if you have cache, it will be a lot faster, right?
If you have cache, no, not necessarily.
The local lookup would take less than a millisecond, or like 4
Depends on how big your cache is, though, right? And how much power you got running the equipment that's querying that cache, versus just sending it up the line.
So the question is, why would your competitors cache where your method is much faster and better?
Right, it is, and the point being that yes, it is faster from the perspective that if they're holding these large caches. First of all, anybody that's dealt with databases knows that the larger your database gets, the slower your database gets, right? So from that perspective, we're going to be on speed every single time. He's like, no, we've got like 15 Oracle clusters. Bring it.
So when you go to a set 7, at the ending it's a DB query, right? So
Sort
you're
of, yeah,
adding the
yeah.
set 7 layer to
It
that
goes to an
query.
SCP. It goes to an SCP that then goes and accesses a real-time database. Usually it's a times 10 thing on an SCP of some kind. Usually it's a fact collector of some kind.
The other side of it is why cache in the first place, right? Again, it's the integrity of the data.
Performance, right?
It's,
How often someone changes their name and their phone number?
but it only takes that one time for your customer to be like, well, I know for a fact that this isn't John Smith. You're giving me John Smith. I know that this is, Joe Schmo.
The amount of changing to that is very small, unless never LP ported.
I agree.
And then you can see that in the database.
I agree. But it's also part of the agreement with all the carriers that you don't cache, right?
That's not true.
Really? You guys,
Depends on your internet.
depends on your interconnect. Okay. If you're going to, let's say, direct with Verizon, if you're going direct with AT&T, really, you must have 34,000 numbers with them.
I have millions of numbers.
Millions of numbers. So they're not going to step on your feet. But in most cases, they don't want you caching. And obviously that's a business decision for them. If you're caching, that means you're not dipping them every single time. That means they're not getting any money out of it. Fact though is, again, baseline, if you deliver the wrong data, you're doing a disservice to your customer. There's no way you're going to know when that data changed. So if you cache even for 24 hours, if that data changes in that 24-hour period, it's all about the tolerance that your customer has for pain, and how much they trust you beyond that point. Can I answer your question? Yeah. Do you have any other questions? Yeah. Oh, sorry.
Also, do LLB?
We are actually about to release that as well. We're going to release it under a different company name though, because it's a little mishmash with CID name and doing LRN stuff. We wanted to kind of focus specifically on the CNAM stuff. We saw an opportunity. Again, a lot of the providers out there, one of the biggest ones, I'm not going to name them, but they're not doing a really good job. And there's a lot of people that are desiring more. Things like paying full price for an unavailable query when all he's doing is dipping his local database to give you city state and still charging you a full dip fee. It's really unethical. That's really not fair. But we are. Actually, the name of that company is pureroute.com. And one of the, I don't know if any of you guys know Ken Rice from the Free Switch community. Ken is one of the, kind of the brainchildren of that too. I'm working together with him on that. By the way, just out of curiosity, what do you think a good rate is on that? Anybody?
0007.
What are you paying right now?
0007.
0007. We'll talk.
What's this for?
That's for
40.
LRN.
I'm an engineer, I don't know these things.
It's the local routing number. So when a phone number changes, like it's ported, you still want to find out exactly where the origination of that number is because you still can save on the route. So at 0007, you get slaughtered.
I'm an engineer, I don't pay the bills.
Right. So you could care less, really.
Add some more zeros to that.
Yeah, I agree. Any other questions?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask you, we had a chat, remember, like a couple of weeks ago, and so that originally you were using one of these old exact ways of querying, generic CNAM query.
This one right here. Yes.
Yeah, suggest you switch or at least give it a try to the new REST interface, REST client, for doing exactly the same. And we're just curious how it worked.
Worked fine.
Okay, that's
It worked. How about that?
okay.
I mean, really, again, it depends on, what version of OpenSIPs you're running. Right now, this is what's in the stable version. This is really your only choice in anybody that's running a stable version. But going to this method, I see that as a better option. You're not requiring, think about this. When you're executing the AVP, you're actually just executing something down in the command line. So,
Forking a new process.
right, it's forking a new process. Here, this is a built-in module.
No, I was just curious if you try to run some, load test to see if actually there's any kind of difference.
I didn't really load test it. I just kind of put it together real quick. I just want to make sure it worked before I put it on the slide.
Okay.
So you told me it worked, and I was like, sure enough, it did work. But we have load tested it using the other method, and it can take a hammer. It really can. Look at it in its most simple terms. We're not really passing that much information. So, our capacity is really unlimited. Do you have any questions? Anybody else? All right. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate it.